Can you hear me? All right, we're live. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that. We're going to start this session, which is how will Industry 5.0 optimize the human-machine symbiosis? The prompt that we were given is Industry 5.0 envisions a future where human creativity and technology optimize the workplace and workforce. A survey of 1,600 knowledge workers and C-suite executives, including over 500 CEOs, found that 49% believe their jobs could be fully automated by AI. How can leaders ensure that this convergence empowers workers, not replaces them? With me on stage, I have Assaf, who's the Chief Human Resources Officer at Ma'aden. I have Casey at Wind, and I have Mauricio at Kearney. Do you guys want to start with your initial hot take on the prompt? Do you think that 49% of C-suite executives are going to lose their jobs, et cetera?
All right. Well, thank you for that, Francis. And good afternoon, everyone. No. I don't believe so. I think that, so my prompt to it, and maybe to be a little provocative, is that we're talking about technology, but this is not about technology. It's really about people. And it's about our ability to coalesce diverse, multidisciplinary teams to actually embrace and embed, digest everything that is coming our way, and do something powerful and game-changing, business-changing with it. So it's more about people, and that's my prompt to start.
Yeah.
Why do you think you have such a contrarian view? And why do you think 50% of people think their jobs are going away? I lived in San Francisco for many years, and when you hang out in coffee shops in San Francisco, I mean, they're talking about 90% unemployment or even 100%. I was just in a session here today where they were talking about artificial superintelligence, where they're imagining something after AI that basically is going to be better than humans in every way. And the attitude is increasingly that humans are going to be obsolete. You seem to be betting on humans still. Why?
I think that there will be job shifts, and the shift will probably cause unemployment in parts of the economy. But we've been disrupting the human jobs for decades, and in the previous industry iterations, right? I think the problem with this one is that it's hitting us so fast that I feel that there's less time for us to adjust as a society, as an economy, as business people. I think that there are some jobs that will stop existing, like perhaps like data entry and some of the analytics. I mean, in our own business, we do a lot of data analytics. What we used to do with a couple of analysts in probably a month, we can do now with technology in a couple of days. So does the job of the analyst go away? No, we just ask the analyst to do more value-adding things. For example, interacting with our clients. We serve clients as advisors and as helpers for them to get things done. So then that analyst can do a lot more, in this case, human interaction, than being in front of a computer trying to model something.
We're going to come back to this in a minute, because I think you mentioned earlier that Kearney is incredibly good at disrupting itself, and that, I think, is a good metaphor for the economy. But let's go to you, Casey, at Wind. Are you also concerned that half of the C-suite executives at Wind are going to be replaced by AI, or no?
Such a tough question. It's a soul-searching question. It's like I'm thinking about, am I going to be replaced tomorrow?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I think a short answer to that is no, because I do believe there are areas where AI is good at, but there are also areas that AI is not good at. It's very important to know. I think from yesterday, Ruth's conversation, Ruth from Alphabet, she said, the advancement of AI is all making us to think what AI is going to be capable of tomorrow. And that philosophy may change because the speed of evolution has come so fast. So in my philosophy, I think AI is good at doing repetitive, predictable, and tedious work. It may be creative, more creative than human in certain areas like advertisement, for example. But I think there are certainly areas where human is more capable of, particularly with the domain expertise, the knowledge, and also in certain areas, particularly when it comes to the sense of uncertainties and complexities that human needs to exercise their judgment. So I'll give a very live example. So when we first launched, we can get details in later, but when we first launched our AI co-pilot financial terminals, when I demonstrated in the forum, some of the analysts in the financial service space sitting there, they're very concerned. They're asking us not to launch this to their employers because they're fear of losing their jobs. But after a year of co-piloting with the AI assistants, I think they all love it because it saves you hours of jobs in a day that you can use to sleep and you can use to think and do other value-added jobs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are realizing with these co-pilots, it's a major productivity accelerant, but it doesn't actually get rid of the need for them in the loop. Could you briefly introduce to our audience what WIND is if they've never heard of it, so that they can have some context? And I neglected to do that with you, but why don't we do
You don't need an explanation. We're all no consulting firm. So for those of who don't know, WIND is a world's leading, and particularly Asian leading financial information terminal and technology solution provider. So we provide similar services like Reuters, Bloomberg, and Refinitiv, etc. But we're particularly strong and grounded in Asia, and we're going very global as well. So on our information terminal, you can find global information on all asset classes, equities, FICC, indices, funds, etc. So typically, I came from a banking background, investment banking background. When I was in my old jobs, very tedious work every day. You need to scrub the information from the financial statements. Analysts who do the tedious work on inputting into Excel, coding stuff, building their formulas, etc. So they need to look up information manually, search for the different indicators that they're searching for specifically. But with the technology of AI, I think in the future it will disrupt the entire experience of how you use that. You may just speak to a mobile phone and it pop up on the screen on the exact information that you're looking at in seconds.
Wow. And how are you doing technology strategy at WIND? Do you have a CTO or a CIO that is in most of these meetings? How far out are you thinking? Are you just thinking about this quarter, the next 6 months, the next year, or do you think farther out than that? What are some of the hard trade-offs? What are some of the big bets? Are there any big scary bets? Anything you care to share with us?
My role oversees the group strategy and as well as the international business. I think the beauty of me coming from previously in Goldman Sachs live banking experience to today a technology company that serves financial services industry is I bring real life experience. I know what the financial professionals are working daily and their pain points. And then therefore I work very closely with our technology team to build the technology into the workflows to make sure that everything goes on smoothly and transformations take on and creating the values. So for example, if we take a role as a research analyst, for example, a research analyst, you start your day, sitting in Asia, start your day at 7 a.m. So right now with the new technology of our AI-powered terminal, you can just open your screen and ask, can you get me the US overnight financial performance and how does the latest GDP or unemployment rate affect the market?
Just to make sure the audience understands that. So WIND was one of the innovators in creating an LLM for their terminal. So for an American like me, I'm more familiar with Bloomberg, but I've never heard of Bloomberg using an LLM. This is something like that. You wake up in the morning, you say, pull up what happened in the US last night. And then it just shows you. And so that's a very interesting use of AI to actually drive your core business. You hear a lot about uses of AI that are sort of like just window dressing, don't actually drive the core business model, but that's pretty core to your model, isn't it?
Right, that's core to our model, that's core to the daily workflow of the financial professionals.
And they loved it?
They loved it, yes.
I'm giving you all the softball questions.
Yes. So I would love to go back to many years when I was a banker, and I would love to have this co-pilot with me because it really helps that you don't need to actually listen to a quarterly announcement calls and take the diligent notes by yourself. Right now, AI does that for you. They provide simultaneous translations and script. It even lay out nicely in real time a table format of all the key signals, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, addressed by the management team in real time. So you have this ready, and you can quickly write your first take as a research analyst. And if you have a company just publish its hundreds of pages of annual results, then you don't need to spend time digging into the details because AI does a very nice summary for you on the data comparison.
Of course, this is paradoxical because it's simultaneously making a trader's job easier and harder at the same time. It's making it easier to do what they were doing before, but it's making everything more competitive and markets more efficient. So it's just never ending.
Exercise your judgment. I think that's what human is best good at.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to you, Assaf. So at Modern, how are you thinking about the future of not just AI, but robotics and the overall application of technology to mining? Is this a conversation that is happening at all the time, and what's it like?
I think, so first of all, good afternoon, assalamu alaikum, and thanks for the question. I just want to, on the first prompt that you had before, I think you get a third and a very heavy no.
Oh, good. Three no's.
I think we're absolutely aligned on what this means. So at Ma'aden, for those of you that know Ma'aden, it's a Saudi-based mining champion. I have been with Ma'aden and the mining industry for about 5 months. My background is finance and consumer goods. And coming in here, I think the initial days, when you come into a new role, I had a number of discussions with our CEO. And the big question I asked him was, what are sort of the 2-3 things that keep you up at night? And technology was one of them. Now, I said, well, Ma'aden is doing a heck of a lot on investing in technology for the future. But he said, are we doing it fast enough? And the more critical question is people. How are we going to get people and capabilities to come at pace with where technology is going? So I think it's top on the agenda in Ma'aden. There's a lot of beautiful experiments that are happening, whether it is with data, with robotics, or with artificial intelligence. And I'm really seeing a very, very promising future, both for mining and for the country and the industry.
When I got to know the panelists, I was so glad we had a real economy business because it grounds these conversations in real use cases that are easy to understand. Can you give me a sense for how technology is being used today in mining operations, what a near future capability would be like, and then what the most sci-fi thing you actually think is possible might be?
Yeah, so there's a number. I think if we look across technology, you look at the kind of the innovation diffusion curve, right? You have the early adopters, and then you go all the way to the other end of the laggers. And I think what Ma'aden is doing, and I think that's fairly similar to other players in the mining industry, is kind of a portfolio approach where we experiment and you create use cases, and then once it's successful, then you roll it out to the rest of the organization. And just a couple of things. I mean, I don't know if you were here earlier today. Technology is really transforming mining in a number of ways. We're talking about the topic today is about Industry 5.0. So if you take about safety, for example, making mining much safer for employees using technology that you can get employees to go and do other sort of more value-adding things. We talk about sustainability, the environment. Exploration, so a big part of mining is to go out there and explore the landscape. Now, exploration has very, very long lead times. We're talking about 15 to 20 years from going out, finding something, identifying it, creating the reserves, and then getting it out into making money out of it. That's a very long time.
Yeah.
So what technology does and can do is really to shorten that time into literally months, if not days. And one example, for example, is one partnership that we're having, and the CEO of Ivanhoe Electric was here this morning. And we have a technology there that goes out and scans vast landscapes, and we can very quickly pinpoint where things underneath the surface are.
And it's Ivanhoe's technology.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's geological sort of data technology where we can find what's on there, and that really cuts those lead times. So that's one, and the other one would be...
And is there any AI in that technology, or is it using something else? How does it work?
That's using more satellite and...
Satellite images.
Images, yes, and data.
Yep.
That's a big one. AI, we do use as well in terms of using machine learning in our manufacturing processes, for example, aluminum. So we use that in the space of waste management, waste reduction. So when you mine, you create large amounts and vast amounts of waste, which also has a knock-on effect on the environment and then on cost, on the bottom line. So we've used AI to really identify of how can we reuse these materials and then have that material used into other downstream processes or products, if you will. So there's a lot going on in the space.
Fascinating. I actually am going to turn back to you because I didn't give you a chance to introduce Kearney, and maybe some of the audience already know the firm. But would you briefly introduce the firm, and then I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Okay, here we go. Kearney we're in an industry called management consulting, but that's like saying I'm a tech company, because it's not very descriptive. What we do is we help our clients come up with strategies. We help them implement them. We help transform organizations. What we're most proud of what we do is that we help organizations transform to be able to digest changes in industry like what we're talking about, right? Right now it's all about AI. A few years ago it was digitization, and some years before was computers and so on, right? So with every wave of modernization or of change, we help organizations do that change.
Amazing.
That's what we do.
And so the competitors are firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, et cetera.
Yes.
You're a strategy consulting firm. But you also do transformation and various you were talking about how you help firms work with their operating models, change their operating models, how you actually do business and make decisions.
That's right.
So the tough question I have is I love these Japanese riddles. They're called koans.
Okay.
The basic question is, what would, if Kearney helps other companies transform themselves, how is Kearney transforming itself? And the form of the question is, what would Kearney, the best strategy consulting firm in the world, tell Kearney if Kearney hired Kearney to give Kearney advice?
Well, we actually, I'll be very vulnerable with this group. We have a lot of improvement to do, but we're very proud of the steps that we've already taken and what advice we're giving ourselves.
Yeah.
I would say, first of all, I was talking about that it's a people problem. It's an oversimplification. I think that what any organization needs to do is, and what we would advise ourselves and others, is number one, set a sense of direction in which you improvise. Back to Peter Drucker many years ago. That continues to be true. We don't like to call it strategy because that tends to be up in the sky. It's more about a playbook. It's about that sense of direction with which you know more or less what the boundaries are. That's number one. Number two, you need to set the conditions for change for yourself. And what is that? Well, first of all, you need to empower leaders to be able to decide, to be able to form teams. What I said about multidisciplinary is super important. What you did, the fact that you're a banker and that you came in and helped introduce that technology, that's exactly part of the recipe. Because the technology alone and the technologist alone will not be able to figure it out. It's not a marketing problem, it's not a business problem, it's not a technology problem, it's not any of them alone, it's all of it, right? So we need to bring those teams together, and we're doing that for ourselves. Next, you need to communicate very clearly to your clients what is it that you're doing, what are the risks of what you're doing. So for example, when we deploy an AI tool for our clients, we need to describe, well, there could be hallucinations. We need to have mechanisms to avoid taking that advice, right? So it's not just taking everything for granted. Next goes to how do you manage it all? And the way that you need to manage what you were saying about how do you experiment? How do you test use cases? without the typical antibody of the organization taking it over. So you need to create centers of excellence that are a little bit away from the core, let them be different, you hire differently. And then once there's something that can be deployed in greater scale, then you start bringing it in. Mm-hmm. I would say the final thing is leadership. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about leadership very nonchalantly, but leadership all the way from the board to management, but then also to your teams. And how do you empower that entrepreneurial spirit, that spirit to explore, but also how do you allow people to take risks that otherwise they wouldn't? I would say we are an organization that is training ourselves. We're training ourselves to take bigger risks, and we take them in these centers of excellence that I talk about, right? Mm-hmm. So that they can be contained. Go do everything you can, and then we'll integrate.
I'm sure you think about disruption over long time scales for this business model. So take, for example, Apple. Apple seems like it's an incredibly defensible company. I mean, who's ever going to compete with this moat that they have built? I've got my AirPods, my iPad, my iPhone, my MacBook. But you could imagine something beyond devices, something like Neuralink, right? You know, brain-machine interface. Then you don't need devices at all. Then you just think thoughts, and your device is in your brain. So there's usually a business model beyond the current business model.
Yeah.
What do you think the most sci-fi professional services business model might look like? How do you think, say, by 2050, or if you can imagine beyond that, it's not that far away. You laughed. It's like we'll still be at it, hopefully, if we're not automated. So what do you think is going to happen to professional services over the next 25 years?
I joke that we need to disrupt ourselves every year, but it's not quite a joke. It's real, because every change in industry, every advancement in technology, a new discovery, electrification changes the game for our clients. It also changes it for us. So we need to be on the edge. I'm not a futurist, so I really don't know where it would be. But if I was to guess, I think that it would be much easier to do everything that we do today. It would be, just tell me what the answer is, Gen AI, and out comes an answer. But then what we would be focusing on, I would hope, is still in interpreting, applying judgment, helping our clients motivate their people. Because people will continue to exist, right? We're going to have to create viable opportunities for people to have purpose. Otherwise, you have revolution. So if we are to shift to much more human aspects than what we need to do today, which is still very technical and using a lot of neurons to come up with the answers, I think it's more about what do you do about that answer.
Yeah, good answer. All right, Casey. Similar question for you. There's a hedge fund that my friend from college started called Numerai, and they're an AI hedge fund. And he wanted to put hedge fund managers out of a job before taxi drivers. That was his whole thing. And I'm not going to go too much into their model, but it's an example of a world where, there are no capital allocators anymore. Markets are just managed by algorithms, just purely algorithmic trading. Your platform is built around the idea that humans should manage money, not machines, right? So is there a how do you think about, you're constantly building tools like the one you mentioned earlier that are making human traders more efficient, making your clients, your human clients, better positioned to make decisions. But what happens when algorithms take over?
Mm-hmm. I think, thanks for the vision for the future. If one day that algorithm trading will overtake all human tradings, I am personally suspicious of that picture, because even in today, different players, different buy-side firms have their own strategy. There is already a segregation of the long-only equity firms that relies on humans' fundamental analysis. There are also a segment of hedge funds who have human traders and human PMs. There's another segment of players who are high-frequency tradings, purely rely on signals, purely rely on data mining algorithm, no human at all. By the way, there's actually human behind this to write those algorithms. So there are different categorization of the buy-side players, and sell-side letting aside on the other side the brokers, the underwriters who are going to bring a company to IPO. The machine is not going to bring the company to IPO. The human underwriters, to your fact, engage with people, engage with the buy-side advisors to tell the story out. But let's just leaving the sell side aside, talking about the buy-side investors, I think our business is not just interacting with human. We interact with machine as well. So there is a terminal as kind of a business model where people see the screen, people analyze information much faster, more intelligently powered by the AI to do your work. But there is already, for more than 20 years, another business model, what we call data feed.
Yeah, just APIs.
Yes, data feed and APIs. That is by pumping the data into the machine, and there is humans sitting under the machine and on the screen to write those algorithms. And the reason that I wouldn't imagine a world that is completely traded by machine is because machine follows a certain pattern. A pattern means a constant trend, but we are in a world of constantly evolving. The macro trend evolves, geopolitics factors comes in, the different indicators of a country may publish and may against certain trend. So machine is not good at handling at the times of volatility, at times of changes. And that's the time that even an algorithm trading firm today will rely on humans on taking on additional signals to adjust their signals and strategies. So I think that wouldn't conflict.
How does the API business not ultimately get commoditized? You're just providing data, that's the straw man. What's wrong with that way of thinking?
So there is data, but there is difference in terms of the breadth of data, the granularity of the data, and if you do derivatives on top of these data. So the data can be derived. If you have more sense in the industry, then you can come up with more derived data that people may actually be more intelligent in leveraging those data. So in our business, that we have different categorization of the data that can be leveraged. And we also help with, today already helping with a lot of quant funds. There are clients that we help them to absorb different kinds of data. There's PIT, point in time. If there is a correction in the old days on a mistake in the data, this would create market chaos as well. So there are different series of data that we pipe into our clients. And when we talk about data, it's a huge amount of data. We have thousands of APIs. And the intelligence that we are building right now today is to use our brain, our model, our finance large language model that we pre-train on to learn how to call upon the thousands of APIs to get the right answer for our clients.
And do you also provide access to human experts to help underwriters? Because there's a lot of nuance in underwriting. That's why firms like GLG exist, for example. Do you have your own way of helping decision makers get that extra nuance that's not just data?
Yeah, so the beauty that AI can do is it can help the underwriters to evaluate an industry with massive amount of historical information, with historical comparison against themselves, but with horizontal comparison against their peers as well. So I'm going to tell you that we not only directly serve the underwriters, but we also serve firms like GLG. We serve firms like Kroll's who do due diligence services for the underwriters. So there's a lot of mechanisms behind that can help each intermediary layers to work more productively.
Amazing. You're going to get the last question. Unless we have extra time, then we'll do little zingers. So As I mentioned, I was so excited that Ma'aden would be on stage because it's a real economy business. And when I'm hanging out in San Francisco or New York, where I used to live, everyone talks about these exponential curves that are just going to go forever, and we're going to, pretty soon end up in utopia or a dystopia. It's very sort of sci-fi thinking. But in a real economy business, you understand that there are all sorts of constraints that you run into when you're actually applying these things. What are some of the constraints that if there was a breakthrough, would totally transform the business? Can you imagine a future where getting a mining job would be even cooler than getting a job at McKinsey?
Or Kearney.
Yeah, Kearney.
I think.
Or Kearney.
I think that is the job to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think coming in relatively new into mining, it's such a fascinating industry, and I think a highly misunderstood industry. And I'm very much with Mauricio on the point on people. And speaking on behalf of industry, you have to take people along with you. And I think we've touched on this a little bit earlier in the discussion, that the rate of evolution of technology happens at a much faster pace than your ability to take of people adoption and taking people along with you. I think that is the real challenge that we have. If we take Ma'aden, we're currently, I think, the extended workforce about 30,000 employees. We are looking with our 10x strategy by 2040 is to triple the size of that business. Now, where does technology come in? And with technology, will that be triple or will it be double? Mm-hmm. Right? And I think time will tell. But we must invest in people. I think it is ultimately about, and yesterday there was a speaker who said, listen, it's not only artificial intelligence that when you think about it, it's also human intelligence. Yeah. And I think that needs to be really in the forefront.
I mean, this would be an incredible outcome for society if this was a pattern, right? Because if you're tripling revenue, but doubling headcount, there's still more jobs at the end of it.
Yes.
And those jobs are probably higher paying, cooler jobs.
So just looping back, I think, to the earlier prompt when we kicked off this discussion, I think jobs and roles are going to evolve, and they're going to evolve, and I'm an extreme optimist here, in fascinating ways. Yeah. I think the workforce of the future is going to enjoy what they do far more than today. Automation, AI, all of that is going to come in and take away the more mundane things, make work safer. Yeah. You're going to have more flexible opportunities. And I think, human capacity is going to be used on things like innovation, creativity. And just one more thing, I want to go back to the Copilot example that Casey, you pointed on. I've also picked up Microsoft Copilot just a couple of months back, which was pushed by Ma'aden, which is terrific. And the minute I saw this and, playing around with this, I said, oh my God, there's so much potential in this. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that came to mind is, and this is maybe a bit negative, this is a PA killer. Uh-huh. And we just had 2 weeks ago a brief training session. I then took my relatively new PA, who's a millennial / Gen Z. I said, why don't you come along and join me for this training? She came in, and of course the first 50 minutes went on, and she kind of saw the potential, and then I looked at her, I said, are you worried? She looked at me and she smiled, and she said, not at all. Yeah. This is going to make my role so much more exciting. And I said, how so? Yeah. And she said, I can now see to do much more valuable and innovative work for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that in itself is the example to say where we're going with this.
I'm sure working for you, there's no lack of work. You can just delegate more. So do you think there will be something like a Copilot, but for mining, where, almost like you're controlling a drone or something? The miner is working with some advanced technology and all sorts of robotic and
AI. It's already happening today.
Great.
So there are drones for surveying, to look at the land. We're using satellite imagery. Wow. We're using machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data.
Amazing.
Mining is all about data at the end of the day.
Well, we're at time, and if you can clap for my panelists, I thought they did a great job handling a tough question. Thank you.
Great job, Francis. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.